And we're rolling. And action.
John Hughes is not a normal person. He's an extraordinary genius. I mean, he's not like your normal self-involved, self-impressed, wildly self-praising and self-pitying Hollywood screenwriter. He's a genius.
And the stories of John's speed of writing scripts are all true. Ferris Bueller, the legend is, and I think it's true, is that there was the threat of a writer's strike. And Ned Tannen came to John and said, I want you to make a movie for me, and I want you to make a movie right now. And if you don't write the script or turn it into me before this writer's strike might happen, which was like 3 weeks from then we won't be able to greenlight it. So John said, well, I have an idea, let me think about it. And he went home and 7 days later turned in Ferris Bueller.
I remember him saying, I think 6 days. He said, I wrote it in 6 days. And some agent at the time said, think how good it would be if he'd spent 7, or 8 or some joke, but mean joke, I guess. But I guess it just spilled out of him very quickly. I think most of his movies were written rather quickly. It's like he gets an idea and then just locks himself up and out they come.
John as the director and the producer and the writer, I mean, it was all out of his head. He had a very rounded view of how character, story, and photography all work together. And also because of his position, he was able to incorporate ideas as they came. Even if it hadn't been prepared for, if there was an idea that arose or a situation that needed expanding, or he could see it on the day and take advantage of it.
He would start rolling film and then, play with the lines a little bit, always making sure he got what was in the script, and sort of be open to what was going on in the moment. I think that's one of the things that I think he was greatest at, from a character point of view, from a comedic point of view, that he was very open to what was happening with the actor and with the rhythm of the dialogue in the moment.
Pardon my French, but you're an asshole.
You're absolutely right, sir. You've hit the nail right in the head. Find out where she is.
I mean, he's a man who really has to have that power, who has to sit on a throne. In fact, I gave him a chair that's very low to the ground. I don't know if anybody will notice it. We had the whole desk, the whole thing lowered, so that when he's sitting at his desk, his secretary towers over him.
John said, I need, some kind of frantic action, if we could go from one office to the other. And there wasn't anything scripted for it. And Jeffrey Jones was very much a script guy.
He wanted a sense of panic and disorganization. I'm not exactly sure how much of it was scripted and what wasn't, but I know that a great deal of it was ultimately we just did it and the camera was running and we just made stuff up.
So John said, can we do some stuff back and forth between these offices? And I said, okay. And Jeffrey's eyes got really wide and he said, what are we going to do? And I said, well, we'll play a game. You remember the bowling games? This one is called Help Hinder. I'll look like I'm trying to help you, but I'll get in your way. So that'll give you something to play against. So in whatever direction I'm going, you'll be going in the opposite direction. Help, hinder. So we'll just see what happens. So that whole scene where we're going back and forth and he drops the phone and I pick it up and try to be him. All of that done, complete, one take. Because it truly, Jeffrey was frantic. And I knew where we were going. Whatever way he was going, I was going to be going in the opposite direction and try to impede him. And it worked out great.
Somehow we got it on film. We knew the basic outline of what to do and put it together. And that whole thing of Edie pulling pencils out of her head, she came up with that.
And I decided I was going to do the bubble hairdo. I looked at her age, and I figured she had a bubble hairdo when she was in high school, and she thought she looked best that way, so she kept it. So I teased it up as big as I could and then smoothed it down and sprayed the hell out of it so it wouldn't move. And I arrived on the set. And John looked at me and he said, how many pencils can you think you can fit in that hairdo and that wouldn't fall out if you bent over? I said, well, let's just see. So I just started sticking them in there and testing it and sticking them in and testing it. So we got 4 to stay without, being seen by the camera or falling out if I leaned forward. So that's how we came up with the first shot of Grace.
John Hughes is just, I haven't seen him for a long time, but when I knew him, was hanging out with him, I just have always been knocked out by just how smart and funny he is, and just how I loved working with him. I loved his playfulness and the way he would just like make the face he wanted me to make. And I would just like mimic him doing his Jeannie Bueller face, and just bug your eyes out, bug them out more, just like, and I'm like, really? Do you think this is just gonna look really bad and really big? And he'd be like, no, just do it. And so I'd be like, I was just so nuts for him, I would just do anything he said.
It's all right, Grace. It's Ferris Bueller, a little twerp. I'm gonna set a trap and let him fall right into it.
I'm sure Jeffrey thought up a lot of stuff and was inspired by John. John was very happy for people to be active and take an interest in how to make gags work, and he just loved it. He would spend all the time he needed getting those things to work right. And
Playing the bad guy is always probably the most fun. And for Ed, getting what he deserves, that it was so much fun.
John likes to shoot a lot of coverage, not just in terms of sort of improv with the actors, but different, like he'll do the same line, medium shot, semi-close-up, and a tight close-up, and then build a rhythm in editing. He was very interested in the rhythm of editing, the character rhythm of editing. So scenes that were a give and take between characters, and there was a lot of dialogue, he took his time with.
There's a drive, left field, twisting, and into foul territory.
When we were at the ballpark, we did the lines, and then he'd say, just do something to take us out, And so I started doing this stuff. It was something that the kids in the neighborhood used to do when I was a kid, when they played ball, and they would say, he can't hit, he can't hit, he can't hit, he can't swing.
Hey, swing, batter, he can't hit, 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 swing, batter.
He would keep the camera rolling, and he'd say, let's do that again, and at the end of it, say it, and he'd give direction while the camera was rolling. Try it the same way, but at the end, pause before you say this line or add this line. So the editor had a lot to work with.
a lot of that stuff is done in editing too. It's so nicely edited. The triple kick that Jennifer does on Jeffrey, those are just happen later. That's John. And I kiss Mia when Jeffrey is watching from the school. And that's a whole editing trick. That was just a brief kiss, and it's turned into that long. That's all Paul Hirsch. So a lot of that movie was really polished up in post. It's a beautiful job putting it all together, I think.
The 1961 Ferrari 250 GT, California.
That car at that time was worth about $350,000. Now it's over $1 million. So we couldn't even afford the rental, because if we rented the real car, the insurance to just have the car sit still on a movie set, nobody drives it, nobody does anything, it just sits still. The insurance was astronomical, so there was no way they could afford it. So we had these kit cars that were fiberglass bodies over a Mustang chassis. And so these cars were a headache because they just didn't, they had little gremlins in them. They didn't want to work right. There were 3 of them. There was one that we rode around in, and then there was one that was souped up for the stunt guys and had like a heavy-duty suspension and a bigger engine. And there was the one that was just a shell. It was just wheels and a body that went out the window. There's one little scene where we go back to the garage after we've had our big day, we pick up the car, and so we're doing a bit of the scene, and the car comes around the corner, and then we pay the guy or something, so he turns the car off, and then we say goodbye, and we turn the car on, and we go. Well, we would do our little scene, he would come around the corner and turn the car off, we'd do our little bit of dialogue, and go to turn it on, and it wouldn't start. We did this like 12 times in a row.
In the sort of Cameron climactic scene where he goes crazy on his dad's car, which was in a location in Highland Park over a ravine, again, I think we had 3 days scheduled to shoot. There was a lot of dialogue. It was a big scene. It was complicated. And I think it took us 6 days to shoot, but it's an amazing sequence.
They had a very elaborate setup to send this thing out the window. They had a pulley system where there was a cable attached to the car, and it went around a pulley and then out through some other pulleys, out the driveway, down the street, around the corner, down the block, and it was attached to a pickup truck, like a tow truck. And so when I lean against the car and it starts to go, 2 blocks away or whatever, the truck took off and so shot that thing like a top, and it crashed through the glass. And then they were a little concerned because when it went down, and they had all these cameras running at the same, I can't remember how many cameras they had shooting that thing in slow motion and everything, you know. When it went out, when it crashed, the fiberglass, when fiberglass breaks, it tends to rip. And so a little piece ripped on the hood, and then they were very scared because it's supposed to be an aluminum body, and then everyone would know it was, you know, not a real Ferrari. So, but they did something. They did some artful placing of branches and, you know, debris on top of it, and nobody, you can't tell.
When I was shooting a parade sequence in Chicago, commandeering a parade in the center of the city and tying up traffic and putting Matthew on a float and having him sing Twist and Shout for 10,000 people. As a kid, I was always on that street, walking up and down the street, and I worked, when I was in advertising, I was about 2 blocks away from there, and whenever there was a parade, I'd slip out of work and go stand there and watch the parades go by. And here I am, you know, 10 years later, having my own parade.
And it just turned out that right in the middle of our shooting was this parade, a huge parade, and I'm forgetting, but it was something like the General von Steuben parade, who was a German or a Polish-German general who had helped during the Revolutionary War. And so the city said, here are the people to talk to. They were thrilled. They said, yeah, we'll let you shoot it.
The parade is certainly something I'll remember forever. That was nerve-wracking because you felt you had to get it. I mean, there were something like 10,000 people in some of those shots. So, you know, you want to get it right because it's hard to get all of them to come back again. And we had worked very hard preparing for that. And I think they did like a promotion like on the radio, you know, come to be in a Paramount movie, you know, which really means come work for free all day. You know, but people are like, yeah. And but then when they got there and they blared the music out, everybody really had a lot of fun. Kenny Ortega choreographed that stuff, and we worked really hard on it. And then early on in the shooting, there's a scene where it takes place late in the movie where I'm running home, my father's in a car, and we almost see each other, and then I run through a house. Inside the house, that's a stuntman takes over for a moment, but on my way out the back of the house, I hurt my knee. I had a knee injury that I had knee surgery years earlier, so I almost couldn't do that jogging. So the parade stuff didn't shoot until toward the end of the shoot, and I was just terrified that my knee would hold up. And it didn't quite. So a lot of the original choreography for that is not in it because I was literally just barely able to do it at that point. So poor Kenny Ortega's choreography with knee slides and all these things didn't work. And I remember learning it, and then I also remember John Hughes with a bullhorn saying, now do it again, but just don't do any of the steps, just make everything up. And I think that's mostly what we did, we just made it up. Yeah, the window washer guy, I think that's spontaneous. I think that's a real person. I'm not sure. But then there's that beautiful mix of actual dancers, you know, along the sides too, that looks so cool. And all the girls on the floor look great. And it was really, really thrilling. The most exciting times I've been involved in, probably, in a movie.
I really love that I worked on it. I love that I collaborated with John. I did several other movies with John, which I love also. As a producer and as an executive. I'm really proud to be part of something that's endured for so long and inspires again. And also, you know, I can look at this movie and go, this movie's great, you know, all these years later. So clearly something I'm very proud of.
Everybody in that movie is great. There's no fluke about it. It was cast brilliantly, written brilliantly, directed brilliantly. And it appeals to the very most basic part of the human spirit, which is to be free to be able to do what one wants, to have a day off and get away with it.
Yep. I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.